My name is Victor, and I want to tell you a story that turned my life completely upside down. This happened last summer in Chicago when I was working as a manager at a large trading company, and my wife Evelina was an interior designer. It all started with small things. Evelina began staying late at work more often, talking about complex projects and demanding clients. I believed her career was really taking off and she was getting more orders. But the real shock was waiting for me later. One evening when she called again about another delay, I decided to surprise her at the office with flowers and her favorite coffee. I wanted to invite her to dinner at that Italian restaurant she loved so much. I arrived at the address and saw that the office building was dark, and security said everyone had left at 5. I called Evelina and she said, "Honey, I'll work a little longer, the client wants to make changes to the project. Don't wait for me for dinner." That's when I realized something wasn't right here. But the worst was yet to come. I decided to drive around the city and think about what to do. As I was driving past a residential area downtown, I saw a familiar figure near an elegant townhouse. It was Evelina. She was standing in the arms of an unfamiliar man about 40 years old, in an expensive suit. They were kissing on the doorstep as tenderly as we once did. My heart almost stopped. I parked behind some bushes across the street and watched. An hour later they came out of the house together and he put her in a taxi. I followed at a distance. The taxi stopped near our house. Evelina got out, took out her phone and called me. "Just got home, so tired. This client is so demanding. Going straight to bed. Love you." I was sitting in my car a few meters away from her, listening to these lies. But the real shock was still ahead. The next few days I walked around like I was in a fog. I couldn't concentrate at work, constantly thinking about what I had seen. Part of me wanted to confront her, but I decided to find out more. I started following Evelina. A week later, when she again went to a business meeting, I followed her at a distance. She really did go to that same townhouse. This time I waited nearby for 3 hours until she came out. But the most painful discovery was waiting for me at home. That same evening, Evelina came home unusually late. She said she had been working with a difficult client, and seemed tired. I pretended to be asleep when she came to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Something inside me was telling me to check her phone. Around 3 in the morning, when Evelina was sleeping deeply, I carefully took her phone. She had always been careless about privacy. No lock screen, all notifications visible. What I saw there made my blood run cold. Messages with someone named Richard. Intimate photos, love confessions, detailed plans for meetings. I scrolled through months of correspondence and each message was like a knife to my heart. But what shocked me most was how they discussed me. In one of the recent conversations, Richard wrote, "When are you finally going to leave Victor? I'm tired of hiding." And Evelina replied, "Soon, honey. I'm just waiting for the right moment." He's so naive, he believes everything I tell him about work. Sometimes I even feel sorry for him, but what can I do? I don't love him anymore. They discussed how she would ask me for money for a supposedly new big project, but actually for their joint trip to Europe. They planned every detail of this deception, and Evelina even wrote, "Victor is so predictable. I'll tell him about an important client who wants to invest in my career, and he'll immediately give me the money. He trusts me so blindly." I felt like the ground was disappearing from under my feet, but the most humiliating part was yet to come. I found correspondence where they discussed me as if I were some kind of inconvenience. Richard wrote, "Your husband seems like a boring guy. How did you even marry him?" And Evelina replied, "It was different then. He was reliable, stable. But now I realize I need passion, not stability. You give me what Victor never could." They laughed at my gifts, at how I tried to be romantic, at how I worried about her work delays. Evelina even sent Richard photos of the flowers I brought her, with the caption, "Look what the poor guy brought. He has no idea that I'm spending this evening with you." Reading this, I felt not just pain but deep humiliation. All my love, care, trust, everything turned into a subject for their jokes. But the final blow was the discovery of their detailed plans. In recent messages, they discussed how Evelina would file for divorce and take half of everything I owned. Richard, who turned out to be a lawyer, gave her advice on how to maximize her profit from the divorce. They planned to claim that I was emotionally unavailable, and that the marriage broke down due to my inability to understand her creative nature. Moreover, I discovered that Richard was married. He had a wife named Martha and 2 children, but he was planning to leave them for Evelina. They discussed how to properly arrange both divorces so that they could be together with minimal financial losses. That night I sat in the living room until dawn, scrolling through all their messages. I saw how my marriage had been dying for months while I lived in complete ignorance. Every "I love you" from Evelina, every kiss, every smile, it was all fake. But the most terrible thing was realizing how long this had been going on. Looking at the timestamps, I realized that their affair had started 8 months ago. 8 months during which I continued to love, trust, and care for a woman who was betraying me every day. 8 months during which every business trip, every delay at work, every tired evening, was actually time spent with another man. I remembered all those evenings when she came home tired, and I made her dinner, gave her massages, listened to her difficult day at work stories. Now I knew that she was tired from passionate meetings with her lover, and her stories about work were carefully crafted lies. The realization of how naive I had been was perhaps more painful than the betrayal itself. The next morning, Evelina woke up as if nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, said she loved me, and started talking about her plans for the day. I watched this performance knowing the truth and felt sick. "I have an important meeting today," she said, "with a new client who might give me a big project. I might be home late." Now I knew that this new client was Richard, and they were planning to spend the whole day together in some hotel. I made a decision that would change everything. That day, instead of going to work, I went to see a lawyer. I brought printouts of all the messages I had found, and the lawyer said it was more than enough for a divorce in my favor. But I decided not to rush. I wanted to understand the full scope of their deception, and most importantly, I wanted Richard's wife Martha to know the truth too. She deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. It took me a week to find Martha's contact information. Richard was indeed a successful lawyer with his own practice, and his wife worked as a teacher at a local school. They had been married for 15 years and had 2 teenage children. But the hardest part was deciding how to handle this situation. I could have simply confronted Evelina with evidence and demanded explanations. I could have filed for divorce immediately. But I wanted justice, not just for me but for Martha too. We were both victims of these two selfish people who thought they could destroy our lives without consequences. I decided to gather more evidence. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented every lie Evelina told me, every fake business meeting, every false work delay. I hired a private investigator who photographed her with Richard at various locations around the city. The photos were devastating. I saw my wife, whom I had loved and trusted for 7 years, in the arms of another man. I saw them laughing, kissing, holding hands, doing everything that she used to do with me, but now it was with him. But what broke my heart most was seeing how happy she looked. In all these photos, Evelina looked genuinely happy. She was glowing, laughing, looking at Richard the way she used to look at me in the early years of our marriage. It was clear that this wasn't just a physical affair. She was emotionally invested in this relationship. This realization was perhaps the most painful of all. I could have forgiven a moment of weakness, a mistake, even a brief affair. But seeing that she truly loved someone else, that she had been pretending to love me while her heart belonged to another, that was unbearable. Meanwhile, she continued to play the role of a loving wife at home. She asked about my day, cooked dinner, even initiated intimacy a couple of times. Every touch felt like a violation now that I knew the truth. 3 weeks after discovering the truth, I was ready to act. I had compiled a comprehensive file of evidence. Printouts of messages, photos from the private investigator, bank statements showing expensive restaurants and hotels where she had been with Richard, using our joint credit card, and even recordings from a voice recorder I had hidden in her purse during one of their meetings. But before destroying my own marriage, I felt obligated to warn Martha. She deserved to know the truth about her husband's double life. I called her at school, introduced myself, and asked if we could meet to discuss something important about our spouses. She was confused but agreed to meet at a coffee shop after work. The meeting with Martha changed everything. Martha turned out to be a kind, intelligent woman about my age. When I showed her the evidence of Richard's affair, she didn't seem surprised. She seemed relieved. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly, looking at the photos. He had been acting strange for months, always working late, taking mysterious phone calls, being secretive about his schedule. But I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. She told me that Richard had become distant and cold at home, constantly criticizing her and their children, complaining about their boring life. Now she understood why. He was comparing their family life to his exciting affair with Evelina. We talked for 3 hours, sharing our pain and supporting each other. Martha decided that she also wanted a divorce, but like me, she wanted to do it right. Together, we developed a plan that would expose both Richard and Evelina simultaneously. We decided to wait until Richard and Evelina's planned romantic weekend getaway, They had booked a luxury resort in Wisconsin for the following weekend, using our money and lying to both of us about their whereabouts. Martha would tell Richard she was visiting her sister, while I would pretend to go on a business trip. Instead, we would both drive to the resort and confront them together. But the confrontation turned out very differently than we had planned. That Friday evening, both Richard and Evelina left for their weekend getaway, both lying to their spouses about where they were going. Evelina told me she was attending a design conference in Milwaukee, while Richard told Martha he was at a legal seminar in Madison. Martha and I drove to the resort separately, planning to meet in the lobby. The resort was indeed luxurious, exactly the kind of place where cheating spouses would go to feel sophisticated about their betrayal. We found them at the resort's restaurant having dinner. They were sitting at a romantic table by the window, holding hands, completely absorbed in each other. Seeing them together like this, so comfortable and happy in their deception, made my anger boil over. But Martha had a better idea than the confrontation we had planned. "Let's not give them the satisfaction of a dramatic scene," she whispered. "Let's do something that will really shake them up." Instead of confronting them directly, we sat at a nearby table where they could see us once they looked around. Martha called Richard's phone and I called Evelina's. We watched as they both looked at their phones, saw our names, and their faces turned pale. "Hi honey," Martha said loudly into the phone. "I'm at that lovely resort in Wisconsin that you recommended. The one where you said you attended a seminar last year? Funny thing, the concierge says they've never hosted any legal seminars here. But they do host a lot of romantic couples." Meanwhile, I said to Evelina, "Hey sweetheart, I cut my business trip short to surprise you. I'm at your design conference in Milwaukee, but nobody here has heard of you. Where exactly are you?" The look of pure terror on their faces was worth months of pain. Richard and Evelina looked around frantically and saw us sitting there, phones in our hands, staring directly at them. Richard went completely white, while Evelina dropped her wine glass, which shattered on the floor. They tried to approach us, but Martha and I simply stood up and walked out of the restaurant, leaving them to deal with the mess they had created, literally and figuratively. In the parking lot, Martha and I hugged each other, both crying but also feeling a strange sense of relief. The truth was finally out and we didn't have to pretend anymore. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Both Richard and Evelina tried calling us dozens of times that night, leaving desperate voicemails trying to explain themselves. Richard claimed it was just a midlife crisis, and begged Martha to forgive him. Evelina alternated between apologies and anger, at one point even blaming me for not being the husband she needed. Martha and I had already consulted our lawyers and filed for divorce before that weekend. We had all the evidence we needed, and both Richard and Evelina were caught completely off guard. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth. Richard, being a lawyer himself, knew he couldn't fight the evidence, and he was more concerned about protecting his professional reputation than fighting the divorce. Evelina tried to claim she deserved half of everything, but her own messages about planning to take Victor for everything worked against her. Most satisfying was seeing their affair crumble under the pressure of reality. Once their secret relationship was exposed, Richard and Evelina's passion quickly turned into mutual blame. Richard was furious that Evelina's carelessness with her phone had exposed them. Evelina was angry that Richard had lied about being separated from his wife. Their grand romance, built on lies and betrayal, couldn't survive the harsh light of truth. Within 2 months, they had broken up, each blaming the other for the destruction of their marriages. Richard lost his wife, his children, and eventually his law practice when word spread about his affair. Apparently, family law clients don't like lawyers who destroy families. Evelina lost her husband, her home, and several clients who found out about her deception and didn't want to work with someone they couldn't trust. Martha and I supported each other through the divorce process and became close friends. Not romantically, we both needed time to heal, but as people who understood each other's pain and betrayal. 6 months later, both divorces were finalized. I moved into a new apartment and started rebuilding my life. It was difficult at first. After 7 years of marriage, I had to learn how to be alone again. But gradually, I began to appreciate the peace of not having to wonder if my partner was lying to me. Martha also started a new life. She moved to a different city with her children and got a job at a better school. Her kids, who had been confused and hurt by their father's behavior, began to thrive in their new environment. The last time I saw Evelina was at the courthouse when we signed the final papers. She looked older, tired, and defeated. She had lost weight and seemed like a shadow of the confident woman I had married. "Victor," she said as we left the courthouse, "I want you to know that I did love you once upon a time. I lost myself somewhere along the way. I looked at her and felt nothing, no anger, no love, no sadness. Just emptiness where all those emotions used to be. Evelina, I replied, I think you didn't lose yourself. I think you found yourself. And it turns out you're someone I never really knew. That was the last conversation we ever had. A year has passed since then. I've learned to trust again, slowly and carefully. I've started dating someone new, a colleague named Jennifer who knows my whole story and understands why trust is so important to me. Martha also found someone new, a fellow teacher who adores her children and treats her with the respect she deserves. Neither Richard nor Evelina found the happiness they thought they were looking for. Richard's legal practice never recovered, and he ended up working for someone else's firm in a different state. Evelina's design business failed when her reputation was ruined, and she moved back to her hometown to live with her parents. Their great love story, which they thought justified destroying 2 marriages and hurting 4 people, lasted exactly 3 months after being exposed. Looking back now, I realize that discovering the truth was the best thing that could have happened to me. I wasted 7 years of my life with someone who didn't respect me, didn't love me, and was capable of elaborate deception and cruelty. If I hadn't found out about the affair, I might have wasted even more years in a fake marriage. The pain was terrible, but it was temporary. The humiliation was crushing, but it taught me to value myself more. The betrayal was devastating, but it showed me what real loyalty and trust should look like. Most importantly, it taught me that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can actually be the best thing that happens to you, if you're strong enough to learn from it and move forward. I'm grateful now for that sleepless night when I decided to check Evelina's phone. I'm grateful for Martha's friendship and support. I'm grateful for lawyers who helped us navigate the divorce process fairly. And I'm grateful that I'm no longer married to someone who could look me in the eye every day and lie with such ease and conviction. Today I'm happier than I've been in years. I have genuine relationships with people who care about me. I have self-respect and peace of mind. I have a future that's built on truth instead of lies. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of a better one. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.